My name is Ram. I work on open source stuff full time, which means very little money, but lots of stickers and free T-shirts. So there's always nice trade-offs, I guess. Every time I've come to Bangalore, people have always bothered to stop me and talk about the history of certain roads and this Wilson Garden came in 1965. There was a lake here, and they're very proud of the history of their things. And there's always like a bit of architecture thing they'll be talking about, saying, did you see this clock tower in 7th Cross? Did you see this old stone facade in this other street and all that? And then there's always somebody nice to chat with you about what Bangalore is, how things came about, etc., etc. So there's always a nice experience in Bangalore about three very distinct things: about the history of certain aspects of the city, about some teeny tiny tidbits of architecture, whatever, and then there's always nice people and a nice community. And obviously, every discussion ends with something about food. Oh, do you like Bangalore coffee? Do you like Chennai coffee? Which Bangalore dosa is your favorite? It doesn't matter because you don't have LPG anywhere right now. So I've been hungry since morning. And so I'm going to sort of carry in the same vein, and I'm going to talk about a bunch of different projects in the AI/cloud space right now. I'm going to focus on three very important parts of each of these projects, which is the history of the project and why it came about, the current architecture of the project and what problems it aims to solve, what part of your infrastructure it can fit into, and a little bit of talk about the community that surrounds the project. I'm going to try and avoid as many references to any closed or proprietary projects and parts thereof I can. I'm trying to execute my demos without open API keys or Anthropic keys and trying to run all of the Olama on this aged laptop which doesn't have a GPU. So I don't know if you noticed, but when I walked into the room, it was sounding like a helicopter. And sorry to the people who were giving previous sessions if it was too noisy. But then again, like I said, I work in open source, and this is the best that we can do. So welcome everybody to my session this afternoon about is AI making Kubernetes invisible. The goal of this is to try and examine a few projects and see what's the kind of experience that a lot of the modern AI tools are enabling for cloud infrastructure and Kubernetes infrastructure, which I guess is no different from 29 other sessions that happened today at the same event. But let's see. Kubernetes was very hip when I started working with it about 6-7 years ago. Not a lot of people were aware of what it could actually accomplish, which is not too much if you think about it. It does two things. It will create your container inside a pod, and it will make sure that the pod never goes off. That's quite literally the only two things that Kubernetes does. Okay, but fast forward 7 years, Kubernetes is like ancient technology right now. If I go out and say I'm working in Kubernetes, a lot of the Gen Z people don't even know what that is. They're like, what AI tools do you use, man? Talk to me about it. And I'm like, let's meet at some other future event. I have something else to do. And so the entire circus is about the cloud native stuff that happens around Kubernetes. And that's where a lot of the work is actually going on if you think about it. So once the world moved on from perfectly functional VM-based workloads to containers, to container orchestration, suddenly everything had to be rewritten. But we do that as an industry, right? So we discover computers, and then we learn to run software and write software on that, and then we discover the cloud, and then we have to rewrite everything. Why? Because it's job security for the next 10 years. And then we discovered Kubernetes and container orchestration after that, and then we have to rewrite everything. We did monitoring with Nagios, whose alerts nobody paid attention to, but then now we have to do Prometheus and whatever else fancy new tool we have just to do the same alerts that we still don't pay attention to. And luckily, we now have AI agents that will do all of the work for us so that we can continue to sleep at 3 a.m., ignoring all of the pages and things like that. So we continue to rediscover things, and the cloud native ecosystem is basically rediscovering everything in the Kubernetes ecosystem once again. Um, it's it's very interesting, or rather, again, it was very interesting for me to get started. And now even cloud native seems ancient. Like if I went to somebody and said, oh, we are re-architecting monitoring around the cloud native ecosystem and cloud native tools because everything is ephemeral in terms of infrastructure and things like that, and we want to cater to like a new breed of systems, people are like, what's that? So systems engineering, unfortunately, is not the prime focus of everybody right now. I'm not saying it should be or it has to be, but given the way AI has proliferated into things, these are all aging in like dog years time. So when I created some parts of these demos about a year and a half ago, some parts of it was very cool and bleeding edge. And now it's just like, okay, we know all of that. What is it that you have that's something new? And we'll go through it one at a time. And the reason it's aging so fast and things are changing so rapidly is because of AI. And I think I don't have to explain what that is. This person here is dressed exactly like a hacker and it's putting me off a lot. But like, I really love it, man. I love the vibe. Okay. No, go for it. But every time I turn this side, it's just like putting me off. And but anyhow, don't mean to put you on the spot. So it's changing things so fast. It's very hard to keep up. And so one of the goals I had in creating this presentation and creating this talk was to try and summarize a bunch of discoveries from the past year and a half. Most of them I've stolen from talks that other people have given. But hopefully it will feel like, something new and something nice. But the thing is, some of these aspects are probably covered in other sessions because every single session is AI and cloud infrastructure. Obviously, they named the conference that, so us speakers have very little choice. But even outside of this event, like I took a look at the KubeCon India agenda, and like most talks seem to be AI platforms, AI, old cloud, AI does all of these boring things for you, there's no, like AI does all of these new things for you, that whatever, right? So every session seems to be that at every single event I go to, and I couldn't find a good icon for event, but I think a circus is a good approximation of what an event is. And this doesn't apply to just India-based events. Like even KubeCon Amsterdam, which is coming up next week, has just AI on the cloud sessions. And I don't know, maybe except like one part of the world, everybody else is talking about AI meets platforms. But this is like the only geopolitical reference I'll make because I want to be invited to CLOUDxAI next year also. Now, why is this particular technology so disruptive in this area? I have 2 or 3 very opinionated takes, but I guess the first part is very generic, which is that a lot of the stuff that we are doing with cloud platforms recently is what is called declarative. And by declarative, we all love writing programs in an IDE that are text-based, right? And that's one thing that is very common to everybody here and everybody in the world that's working with computers. So as a result, all of the clicky, pointy, extra command things that we used to do became flat files and text files. And what I mean by that is, if you take infrastructure as code, for example, we took what configuring infrastructure actually is. So that's the sound I was talking about. Thank you. Please don't mind that. So we took infrastructure as a code, as a principle, and we transformed a bunch of different configuration stuff that we used to do into a flat file. Everybody is doing that, right? And then with Kubernetes, we're all writing YAML files. We don't like it. Is there anybody who enjoys writing a YAML file? Not even you, right? No, man, that can't be true. I'll give you the hacker, cosplay, but I can't give you like YAML satisfaction. But yeah, apparently there are people. But transforming every single thing that you think of and work with into flat files and YAML is like the first part of why AI is so disruptive in this particular space. Because LLMs, which is one of the most popular forms of interacting with AI and all of that stuff, is extremely capable of generating text files that can be accurate, that can be useful, that are well formatted, that are not missing colons and semicolons and tabs or spaces and commas and all of that fun stuff. And so LLMs have been much more effective at humans demonstrably in being able to generate YAML files that are more functional and that are more useful. Now the second part of why this is happening to the DevOps and the cloud part is because inherently this is a very complex piece of technology, I guess. It's just very difficult for humans to comprehend the various abstract levels of what there can be and there cannot be. And one of the other areas where AI is expected to make huge impact is like in the legal field. I'm so happy. I hate lawyers. I hate all of those documents that they send because they want clauses to protect themselves and whatever from whatever else. And so all of these text-based things that were extremely complex have become much simpler and are breaking down into much better, more consumable, more palatable pieces. And so because of these two things that affect us simultaneously, especially pertaining to cloud, cloud native, Kubernetes, blah, 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 we're seeing that much of an impact. And for the first time in recorded history, engineers have written their own profession out of a job. So if you were in the keynote and the kind gentleman referred to so many professions that were getting affected because of AI and LLMs and all of that, we've been doing this to every single other industry that we know of. We're replacing accountants with accounting software. We're replacing a lot of warehouse employees with warehouse robots and things like that. We're all collectively responsible. Okay, if you've written a single piece of automation in your life, you've replaced a job. Okay, whether or not you know it, whether or not you like it. Now that it's happening to you, everybody is on arms about, will AI replace my job today? Will AI replace my job 3 years from now? Will I have anything to do 3 years from now? Go read something new. I don't know, learn weaving or making baskets or whatever it is that makes other people happy. I'm sure other jobs will exist. Okay. Again, for the first time, we have chanced upon a technology where we are replacing ourselves, and somehow that's not very palatable to us. So let's take a look at some of these tools and technologies that we can pretend to know over the next few years, so that there's some semblance of job security for all of us. Okay. So the first tool that I came across in this space that actually did something quite fancy and quite useful was CLOUDxGPT. And CLOUDxGPT was born out of this need for doing a lot of troubleshooting around Kubernetes, because all good engineers put very bad error messages. Okay. I'm sure everybody will agree. Don't nod, because your manager might be sitting next to you and watching. So all good engineers, even within the Kubernetes and the larger cloud native community, did not have very effective debugging tools and things like that. So one of the first use cases for which we started to apply artificial intelligence was debugging in the Kubernetes world. And so CLOUDxGPT was born out of this effort, and it was first debuted 3 years ago in KubeCon at Amsterdam, where incidentally we are going this year as well. And it broke down the entire notion of Kubernetes debugging into 2 or 3 distinct pieces. The first piece was what is called analyzers. So the tool was able to do a bunch of different analysis on the pods that you're actually running. So basically, the way it functioned is you have your Kubernetes cluster, it has a bunch of pods, whatever, and then you had CLOUDxGPT as a CLI tool that had access both to the Kubernetes cluster as well as a large language model. And so what it will do is it will extract a lot of data about your clusters, about the pods, about the current state of things, your logs and all of that, and then it will use an LLM to evaluate certain parameters about the text that it just extracted. And for those who are enterprisey and really care about a lot of the data going to external LLMs, sorry, but that's how the world works. But also, there's two things that Kate's GPT supported. One, which is running models that are local to your own infrastructure, and two, the ability to mask a lot of the data that actually, what happened? Noise. The noise is from my laptop because it's running an Olama and it doesn't have a GPU, and I'm poor, okay? So it moved to sandbox status in 2023, and it does enjoy a lot of community support. Okay, so hopefully without blowing my laptop up, we'll be able to run a quick Kate's GPT demo. Okay, yeah. So before I walked on stage, a lot of these pods were broken. So I thought, okay, my Kate's GPT demo will be very nice because a lot of these, the more broken pods you have in your cluster, the better Kate's GPT is for you. Okay, so let's very quickly run through the demo. Okay, so Kate's GPT installs as a CLI. Okay, there's a bunch of different things that you can do. What I'm going to start with is analysis. So Kate's GPT analyze. And instead of doing like a full analyze and bringing that fan noise again, I'll do what is called a filter. Okay, I'll first list all of the filters that are available, and then let's see. So right now there's no problems detected, but that can't be true. So there's two broken pods like I showed you, and then now Kate's GPT is able to check, which of these pods are actually broken, and it'll tell me exactly what is wrong with those pods. Okay. Now, depending on the model that you're using, you can do much better in terms of give me some remediation tips and find out a lot of the security issues specifically that are available in this pod, etc. So Kate's GPT is capable through its native architecture and through a bunch of integrations to really extend all of that. So let's see, Kate's GPT filters list. Yeah, so it has all of these different filters which will break it down by different areas which you want to specifically investigate. So you can install more if you want to, but I don't like Kubernetes networking, so I'm not going to go into any of those. And you can, depending on which area you're looking at, maybe you have broken deployments, maybe you want to generate some vulnerability reports and things like that. Maybe you have some audit trails you want to check. But do you notice how all the developer stuff are available natively, and the stuff that you don't care about, which is security and auditing, are built as integrations, so you can skip it and say, oh, I didn't know that was available. So anyhow, Kate's GPT has a fairly extensive list of integrations that you can extend its capabilities, and it's able to generate a lot of information depending on what it is that you want, and it will also do things like explanations. Okay, so I'm using, like I said, this is the provider I'm using is a local Olama, and I'm not sending any of this data outside of my cluster / laptop, whatever. And so it's not just able to identify errors in my pods, but it's also able to give some information about remediation and explain what the error is to me, just basic stuff. Okay, so if you're able to fine tune your models to improve on Kate's troubleshooting better, and you have a private model that can do much better than any of the generic models available, you can link to that, and you can make sure that your Kate's GPT is extremely efficient at troubleshooting your Kubernetes clusters. You can run these as a cron job, whatever, and then you can get all of that information in an email, which you can ignore, whatever, right? So Kate's GPT, fairly capable, pretty good in terms of what it can do, but overall in terms of its capabilities, I found it quite limited in that troubleshooting was the main use case for this, and it did not achieve a lot more than that. Okay, so like I said, enjoys a lot of community support. So if you're in the business of writing some open source stuff, or you want to write some open source stuff, you have good Kubernetes knowledge, you want some AI experience as well, or you have some AI experience, you'd want to help the Kubernetes, the poor Kubernetes people who struggle, right? It's a good project to get started. But remember, I said there's always some food stuff in Bangalore and not just history and architecture. Lunch is getting ready. It's not yet ready, so don't leave just as yet. Okay, we'll come to it in a bit. Now, the next big news in AI nonsense in the past year and something has been MCP, okay, Model Context Protocol. Most people don't know what it is. Like what's model, where context, what protocol. It's fine, okay. The way I like to understand it is like it's the API for AI, whatever you're trying to achieve, okay. So it was the first and the most unsafe way to run API AI agents by calling them API, whatever, okay. MCPs are great, but extremely unsafe. There's like so many open security issues pertaining to MCP, which is getting solved very quickly, but you know, still use it at your own discretion, whatever, right? I'm starting to sound like a Durex advertisement, whatever. So very efficient at problem solving. It really helped in two things. One is it was able to interpret a lot of natural language commands or statements and prompts, and it had agency. So it was one of the first tools out there that could do some other work based on certain intelligence it had, and so that's why it enjoyed immense popularity. So you could dictate it through a prompt, and then it could do something else in turn. It could call an API, it could trigger some other job somewhere, it could create something for you if there was an end API that was available to you. So there was a tool that I saw where you can give your API endpoints in the form of a JSON, and it will output an MCP server that you can then install and run and introduce new security vulnerabilities into your server. But just the sheer amount of capabilities in terms of what the AI agent was able to do was phenomenal. It continues to be phenomenal. And I'm a big advocate of the MCP project. There's also a safe MCP project that's live. I think that's part of the OpenSSF, which is one of the other foundations that I work with very closely. So if you're interested in that, so if you like security and you want to get started on some of the AI stuff, I think this is a good point to get started. Nonetheless, if you just want to do some really capable AI engineering, I think MCP is a great starting point. And MCP was a baby of the Anthropic company. So it came from Anthropic. It is now a part of an open source foundation called the Agentic AI Foundation, which is a part of the Linux Foundation. They made the donation only at the end of last year. So very Merry Christmas to everybody, I guess. And so this is now in the open being built where people can always contribute, but you could always write your own MCP servers and things like that. Fast MCP, which one of the previous presenters alluded to, is a great place to get started with MCP. And so in today's demo, I am going to bring up a Claude instance, yes, that can hopefully connect to one of my clusters. Do you have access to my local Kubernetes cluster? Please say yes. So you can interact with this just as you would with any other AI LLM tool, and then it's able to do everything that you want with your Kubernetes cluster, any common operations that you want. Okay, so now I'm going to ask, can you please deploy 2 instances of Nginx in my appropriately named cluster. So now we can verify if this is doing the work, okay? So I'll just ask it to deploy some Nginx stuff. And then it'll ask for permission. So the robots have not fully taken over yet. So this is what I'm asking it. I'm not giving it the image name. I'm not telling it where to fetch it from. I'm not saying if it should use a Helm install or install with YAMLs or whatever. So it's trying to deploy it with a Helm chart. It tried, and then it's not working, but it tried with a YAML approach, and all of it, it's figuring out by itself. So just an LLM with enough context about Kubernetes is able to make 2 deployments. I have not written a single line of YAML. How cool is that, right? So that's what MCP can do for you. So you can do a bunch of other like silly little things also. List all the pods in the default namespace. And then it'll do like a kubectl get pods inside this namespace. All of that translation it's able to do on its own because the LLM is smart enough to figure out all of this. And then, just like some very enthusiastic intern, it'll ask me, oh, these 2 pods are broken, can I fix it for you? I broke them on purpose. I left it there for this wonderful demo that's going great so far. I don't know when it's going to break. It's very nervous. But that's what it's capable for. And that's why I love the MCP project. But you know what's happened as a result? All you golden cubestonauts are dead, right? Like, there's no point in memorizing all those things about all those tools and all those certifications. And I guess there is some benefit. I mean, bragging rights, a nice backpack, but whatever, man. Those are dead cubestonauts after like the MCP Kubernetes thing was written, and I rewrote a little bit of those things, but there's like enough open source Kubernetes MCP stuff for you to get started, but you can fork those and write your own. It's not very hard. If I can do it, I'm sure you can do it. Okay. The next project that I want to talk about is K-Agent. K-Agent was started by this company called Solo. It's now a part of the CNCF. They co-wrote it with another tool called KMCP. Their goal was to make Kubernetes the tool of choice or the platform of choice for deploying any kind of agents on Kubernetes. So they want, if you have an agent or if you have an MCP server, they want you to deploy it on Kubernetes so that it function. So that's the goal with which K-Agent was written. They equate an agent to a pod. So like every single agent that they have, they want it as an individual pod, and they want to be able to orchestrate multiple agents and things like that, which I think is very useful in terms of a simple abstraction and is a good best practice to keep in mind. It's now part of the sandbox, like the CNCF sandbox. It's under very active development. So if you want a very active open source project to work with, I highly recommend using K-Agent and going that route. I don't want to give a demo because in the keynote that's going to happen next week, there's going to be a good demo. You can watch it there. But there are K-Agent pods deployed on this cluster, if you can see. So each of these, if you look very closely, they have a controller, but they also have all sorts of tools for each of the things that they're trying to do. There's also a UI, so you can enable like a K-Agent dashboard somewhere, which which will work. And then using that dashboard, you can configure all sorts of fun things. Okay, but anyhow, I'm sure you don't want to see a dashboard. Okay, I don't want to see it. The next thing I wanted to showcase is small agents. Okay, and small agents is like this true agentic framework. Also, the Agentic AI Foundation and the big news about AI agents was MCP in like the first half of 2025, and it was all A2A or agent to agent protocol in the second half of 2025. Small agents is based on the A2A protocol, and if I showed MCP and I don't do A2A, the A2A community is going to get, they're going to feel sad, FOMO, right? So small agents is slightly from a different ecosystem. It's not meant for the Kubernetes ecosystem. It's something that I'm trying to retrofit into the Kubernetes ecosystem. It was launched in very late 2024, very early 2025. It was a response to a lot of the other agentic frameworks such as LangChain and Autogen and all of these things, where LLMs were used to create other programs and agents that can function as opposed to writing the agents yourself. So most workflows had you as an engineer, you provided a prompt, the prompt will go and function to create an agent, etc., etc., create a configuration, and then you'll run the configuration or whatever you get and have a functional agent. Whereas small agents is about having a very small boilerplate, write Python code for anything that you want to accomplish. So in this particular example, what I have is a bunch of different Python libraries. I have an LLM Python library. I have small agents, obviously, but I also have like the Kubernetes Python library. And using these three, I can create tiny Python programs that can do a bunch of different things for me. So let's take a quick look. Okay. So there is a Python environment for me. Okay, so in this Python environment, I have all of these libraries installed. I can show it to you later. But what it is capable of doing is I can run like a very simple thing where it will, let me show you. So this command should run a bunch of small agents for me. So I'm going to give it a prompt. Can you deploy OpenCast to my Kubernetes cluster? I don't know if it can. Let's see if it can. Okay, and then what it will do is it will run a bunch of different Python. It will create Python programs, run them on the fly, and just try to do the deployment. Okay, error. Yes. So what it's trying to do is it doesn't have a 3.1. Okay. Then use a 3.2. So I'm going to try the same thing. It's going to ask me for a prompt. Can you deploy an OpenCast pod to my Okay, so now it has access to the model, and it's going to write a bunch of different Python programs that will try and deploy a pod to the cluster. We can watch as it does this, but it's taking a little extra time. Like I said, non-GPU based hardware, it can take time, but the goal, the idea here is you can write your own agents to do this work, and you can interpret all of your asks and needs in natural language as opposed to them being YAML files that you then kubectl apply, or God forbid have to use Argo for all of that deployment and all of that. Okay, so let's allow that to run, and the important things I wanted to highlight is it executes those programs in a sandbox. Because I'm using a local model, the data never leaves. It iterates and improves its own code over a few generative loops, and it works with all popular providers and things like that. The last thing I wanted to showcase was Headlamp. It comes from like the Microsoft stable. It was introduced as a sandbox project in 2023, and they introduced an AI assistant which is extremely capable of any kind of interactions that you want. So just like what we saw with Claude, you can do with Headlamp as well. And the reason I really like it is it can be deployed in cluster. Your LLM can be deployed in cluster, or you can choose any cloud-based LLMs that you want. And it's got a lot of enterprise-ready features. And the best thing is, it was its own sandbox project, but at the end of last year, I don't know what changed. Maybe Microsoft being Microsoft, it was accepted as part of the Kubernetes official SIG UI project. So from being a sandbox project, it became like part of core Kubernetes itself. So I don't know if it's considered graduated right now, because Kubernetes is graduated. So anything part of Kubernetes is obviously graduated. But I know a bunch of open issues that have to be resolved with Headlamp. So I don't know if it should be sandboxed or graduated. But the current status is it's part of Kubernetes SIG UI, which is a reorg, works extremely in their favor. But and if you're using for if you're looking for a Kubernetes-based UI and you're using some very broken tools, it's a good alternative even in like an enterprise context. So I want to show the demo, but yeah, so this is the small agents that wrote code like 5, 6, 7 times, and it said it also needs help in deploying open cause, but maybe it can do better with like an Nginx pod. I don't know. Sometimes smaller prompts work better. So anyhow, let that run. Try Headlamp on your own. It's very easy. There's an AI assistant plugin. You can configure all of that. Just install 2 YAMLs. What's the future like? AI provides an abstraction over Kubernetes, which was already an abstraction, but all abstractions tend to leak. So your AI stuff is going to break anyway. There's 2 very complicated areas, one pertaining to non-determinism, which gives rise to all kinds of hallucinations and other things. And the second thing is we're all involved in creating a lot of symbolic systems all these years. And now we're moving to stochastic and statistical systems, which don't quite respond the way symbolic systems do. And the main difference is if I hit a command, I know I'll get a certain kind of output, but because of the non-determinism of AI, you're not sure of that output. And so we are inventing like these things called guardrails and scaffolding, which don't really help, but kind of help, but not quite. So it's going to be a tough path to figure out. And I think we're all together in this journey of figuring things out. This is a very famous thing. If it's good, it can't be fast. If it's fast, it can't be cheap, or it can only be 2 of these 3 things. I think AI is fast and cheap right now. More cheap than fast, I guess. But you can, things are moving extremely quick, and I'm sure it won't get to like unicorn status, but we have to get there as quickly as possible as a community. Very important thing, Victor Farchik, who I copy a lot of talks from, to be honest, is a great like DevOps guy. He runs this channel called DevOps Toolkit. Even he changed his channel name to DevOps and AI Toolkit. That's the kind of impact this stuff is having. Okay, so watch out in the space. There's a lot happening. Janki Ram gave a talk about how AI agents should become a part of core Kubernetes at KubeCon Delhi. Again, I stole some ideas from that talk too. But this is the one thought that I wanted to leave you all with. Stop asking about what AI can do for you and make you more lazy. Start thinking about what you as cloud practitioners can do to make AI more reliable and much better. Good luck with your journey with AI and all of that. You really need all of the best wishes. That's me on LinkedIn. Give me a follow, send me a message, say hi, whatever. Don't be a stranger. I'd love to hear from you. I really appreciate feedback about everything you've heard so far. Sorry I had to cut down the demos a little short today, but your LLMs are as good as reading documentation as I am. So put your LLMs to work, learn about all these tools, do some homework. Time for lunch. Bye-bye.